And we're live. So welcome to everybody who's joining us today on Facebook. I'm Marcus Marcantonia, the Gaelic editor for the Poets Republic, and it's fantastic to welcome a host of poets.
So welcome to everybody who's
Oh,
today
hang on, I'm hearing an echo.
I'm Marcus Marcantonia, the Gaelic editor for the Poets Republic, and
Sorry, I was hearing myself in echo, and we don't need that at all. So it's fantastic to welcome a broad selection of poets from across Scotland, Ireland, Cornwall, and the Indigenous Nations of America. Never before have we been so diverse and spread throughout different locations in the world. So it's fantastic to have you all with us. If you join us on YouTube Live, that's brilliant. If you join us on Catch Up on Facebook, fantastic that you're with us too. I'm going to hand over to Neil, who's our founding editor and managing editor, just to introduce the issue for everybody.
Hello, hi, and welcome to the first launch of what could be 2 or 3 launches of issue 10 of the magazine. And it's now 3:05 over here. I understand it's about 9 a.m. in Chicago time. Thank you to all our guests for getting up at this hour and getting ready at this hour. And I'll just give a wee introduction to the magazine. The magazine, The Poets Republic, started in 2014, and it was created really, the ideas were on the back of a fag packet, really, and it's been running ever since with no resources and with a pool of collective talent. The pool of talent is what is keeping it going. And it was created to try to create an alternative to what we saw perceived to be the status quo of Scottish poetry. And ever since then, it's grown, it's become internationalist, and I hope it's kept to its radical roots. And we're now at issue 10, which feels like a bit of a milestone. And it's the biggest magazine so far at 64 pages. Poetry readings and revolutions never start on time, do they? So I'm gonna hurry up and so we can move on to some other people. I see I'm down here to read a poem, so I'm gonna read a short one, which is a tribute to a friend of mine called Pete Laver, who died when he was 36, very sadly, prematurely. He was a remarkable person, a remarkable poet, and even to this day, several decades later, is much missed by a lot of people. This poem is called Elegy for an Anarcho-Marxist Poet. What's left to say when a disheveled ghost turns up when you least expect, grabbing the last free seat on the bus, passing out jokes like cannabis smarties, talking as if we were off to the pub and it was all jest, this death, malarkey and loss. Accepted it attests to how the memory leaks obscurely, spins on what is never the main event. Its party trick is summoning from the back lanes the ones we hardly knew we cared about, while those who filled our diaries are left as footnotes. Leave them there. It's those who catch us out who gave the best, like you, my friend. All that except you'd have said it better and have said it first. So on that cheerful note, I'm now going to introduce a very fine poet who is originally from up here in northeast Scotland, from Aberdeen, and writes in Doric a lot of the time. And so I'm really delighted that she's here, and this is Leslie Benzie, please.
Hello. Hello. Can you hear me okay? Okay.
We can, yeah, fire on, Leslie.
Hi there. Thanks for inviting me to read. As Neil said, I write and read sometimes in Aberdonian Doric and sometimes in English. The first poem I'm going to read is from my collection, Fessin Reared. Fessin is the Doric word for reared, and this happens to be an English poem. It's written about an international journal. Well, he's actually Australian, but he writes internationally. And he's won many awards for his journalism, his investigative journalism. And this poem's called John Pilger. John Pilger, backed up by his meticulous research on the subject matter, sat across from the US Senator, calmly questioning successive US administrations' role in the destabilization and overthrow of Central and South American governments, from Chile, El Salvador, through Nicaragua to Haiti and Venezuela. From direct intervention such as bombing the presidential palace, killing Salvador Allende, and ushering in Pinochet, who was, as they say, sympathetic to US interests, and through his death squads authorised the torture, disappearance and killing of thousands of his own people, to the more covert strategies of arming and training right-wing rebels who torture, maim, kill and hold a mirror to the master planners of evil by any other name. The senator sat across from John Pilger, batting aside these points of history, accurately recorded from living memory, detailed in US government documents and cinematography, as if he were swatting flies from the decaying carcass of truth. Magnified behind his expensive glasses like those of an alligator with all its murderous intent lurking beneath, except for the eyes bulging with aggression as the questions penetrate the shallow facade. He denies point blank that thousands died in Chile, opening wide his drawling jaws to snap. That's bullshit. Maybe a few hundred troublemakers died, but Pinochet presided over an economic miracle in Chile. John replied, that certainly was not the case. An elite few became very rich while the vast majority were dispossessed and denied even the basic stuff of life. But even if that were true, did the senator think these lives were a price worth paying? Yeah, it was necessary. But surely if you feel no remorse for the massive human cost, the action that the US took in Chile was illegal and flies in the face of all it says it holds dear, freedom and democracy. Allende was a democratically elected leader. How can you possibly justify the actions? The senator cuts through his argument, shouting triumphantly, national security, the trump card that is placed on top of any pack of lies used to justify any aggression. John suggests, but Chile posed no military threat to the US. Look, just understand one thing. We ain't the biggest superpower on the globe for nothing. If anybody does something that ain't in line with our economic or political interests, we're going to do whatever we like. Take them out because we can. Understand? And apologies for my terrible American accent there. It was the best I could do. So my next poem that I'm going to do is on a completely different subject matter. It's the titular poem of this collection, and it's called Fessin in the Vernacular. At times, life can be a North Sea wave, bracken army, called and hard like a fist I'm nae quick enough to sidestep. Like lost loves, it takes my breath awa, and I'm soaked through, unable to cling to the parts of me nae shaped by the harshness. At others, I'm a dreich island landscape, shot through with the strength of slate grey dense volcanic rock, the dark violet sky circling o'er heed. The day I took you past the fitty bar, my da's favourite, for my family congregated to bid him his last. There's e'en o' them wide blue skies turning the sea a deep blue green like a zine. You mock my accent that shifts back and forth, Fae Glasgow, my spiritual hame, and back to Aberdeen, like the wee waves lapping at our taes. Despite the charged sea life smell, just the same, the salt smirks our kisses, and I'm grateful for it all, and that ancient ability to think with my heart. Moving on to my next poem is from my very first collection, Sewn Up, and I hadn't read it for a really long time and came across it recently and thought, I forgot how much I like this poem. So it's a poem about a club that used to exist in Glasgow called Club Cubana, and it used to raise money for medical aid in Cuba. So the first part of the night was they taught salsa and merengue dancing, and the second part of the night they held a club, so a dance night. So this is the poem. I just need to find the page. So here we are. This poem is, as I said, it's called Club Cubana. Diverse on Latin feet, grapple with the salsa at the club the night. Identified with the politics of the oppressed, we help unify the writhing bodies. I squirm uncomfortably in the void between the idealism and the realism of a Latino vowing with loaded machismo breath to teach me all he knows. For an underdog, he's a fast mover, but I rapidly reassure I've been taught those lessons afore. Detached from me and my rejection, he taxes impartial erection for a wonder to sniff on mere receptive fair floors. I tap my smile and find myself a while in a hot, needed, swept merengue. My unadept feet play pretender to the close encounters native with the beat. The dark, sweet energy penetrates my weary veins, and I feel right at home, regardless of my heed full of shite, my soul's full and brimming o'er the flare of Berlaroon, the brune skins, and momentarily my worldly fears pale in significance. And another wee poem from this same collection is called Aneath the Stairs. Having nothing else but neighbourly relations, she was caught unawares when he said he had something for her. Then she wasna sure if he wanted to gie her it at a', 'cause as he placed it in her hand, he pulled it back and forth, then pinned her to the wa' aneath the stairs behind the lobby door. His grin frothed whispers she didn't understand, till he came to the point in her hand. She pulled awa', her sma' grasp on reality, retreating into the childhood fold. She closed the door and washed secretly. So the next three poems are really short poems from this latest collection called Wanderlust Women. And let me just check the page 20. So I was very fortunate to do a wee bit of traveling in Africa, in Kenya in particular. And this are two little poems. One's called Kenyan Flight and the other's called The Great Rift Valley. So Kenyan Flight. During parts of the flight on a 12-seater airplane from Jomo Kenyatta to Noboisho Olseki, on an air current's whim, the plane quivered, flew very low, then very high, and it felt as if nothing much separated us from the 25,000-foot drop to the ochre and burnt orange earth below. And this is the Great Rift Valley, which is one of the bits we flew over. This vast upwelling of the earth's crust gave birth to the verdant green Cherangani hills and a chain of still active volcanoes, all human life as we know it, and Kenya's Great Lakes. To the west of sparkling Lake Baringo rose the Tugan Hills, where hominid fossils from 14 million years ago were found, and on its shores, rubies, andros, sapphires. Flying over Lake Bogoria, a caustic cauldron fringed by geysers spurting columns of steaming water, I saw a flock of over 1 million pink flamingos, and I felt the earth move within me. And this is the poem that's in this issue of the Poets Republic, and it's also in Africa, and it's called Sundowner on the Masai Mara. And this one's in Doric as well. The Mara draws me in to the edge of existence, as I sit under yalla barked and thorn acacias, spreading their umbrellas aboon or sundowner denner. Where Maasai guides have sma cowhide pouches tied across their chests, full o' African herbs to keep the hungry lions at bay. While we watch giraffes raxing to nibble acacia leaves as kingfishers and elephants drink for the river Liatioli. The earth moving to the motion o' hunters o' wildebeest, and impala springing to the lakeside, roiling me glistening hippos. They grab at een another's heads with vast mouths, then stick tightly together at slithering movements for the water's edge, as the same old imperialist powers secrete their rapaciousness ahin corporate logos and offshore accounts, and killer crocodiles eye their calves. And I think that's probably my time up. So thanks very much for listening.
Thanks very much, Leslie. You've definitely kicked us off in star form and set the bar. It's been fantastic to hear your poetry. Thank you for being with us. Round of applause there going round. I'm going to introduce the first of our Indigenous voices today, and it's our guest editor, Kimberly Blazer, who is joining us all the way from America. We were really, really pleased to be able to include a special section in the magazine devoted specifically to the Indigenous Poets of America, and Kimberly's going to tell us all about it.
Miigwech, Marcus, maybe a little about it. Great to be with you all today. Kim Blazer, Indigenous Anishinaabe Kwe Indao, Gawababi Bonikag, Indunjaba, Migizi and Dodem. I'm Kim Blazer. I'm Anishinaabe from the White Earth Nation of Northwestern Minnesota, but I'm coming to you today from Wisconsin, where we have about 3 new inches of snow, and it's morning and we're drinking coffee. I'm really grateful to be with you and to hear the poetry. I really appreciate the strength of the previous poets' work, and I think we have a lot in common, Indigenous poets and Scottish and Irish poets. As perhaps, relationships to the land, having to deal with colonization and ongoing colonialism and so on. And I think we can see that those sort of cross-pollinizations in our work. So I had the privilege, as Marcus said, of curating the Indigenous section in this issue of the Poets Republic. And my intention was to partly counter stereotypes that people have about Native American writers. The poetry that I selected comes from a variety of tribal nations and writers whose voices, form, and subjects also vary widely. So you will have a chance to hear from 2 of those amazing poets. But I want to say just a couple small things about Indigenous poetry. I often say that it is a celebration of influence. And this is in contrast to Harold Bloom's idea of an anxiety of influence. You will hear in much of the poetry, or read in much of the poetry, this echo of our history, the oral song, stories, and so on, as well as an attention to contemporary issues. So the poems are both retaining the sense of orality continuing to remain connected to tribal places and ideas and ways of being in the world, at the same time that they are doing new things on the page, for example, which you may have seen in some of the poems like Craig Santos Perez, or you will see when you get this issue. So maybe we can think of Indigenous poetry as having a core, but also having a difference. And I'd like to share a quote from Lucy Tampahansa, which I often use when I talk about Indigenous poetry as well. And she is another Dene writer. She was the first Navajo poet laureate, and Laura, who you'll meet today, is the second. And Lucy says, poetry can't be all about beauty. It is a balance. And I think that's what you'll hear in Indigenous poetry, because there is still this dedication to family and place and community and spirit. At the same time, there is what Gerald Visner talks about, which is resistance, and that idea of survival and resistance coming together in what we call survivance. So I'm going to read one poem from the volume, and then I will introduce Laura Tohi. And this is a really new poem, and I really don't have a lot to say about it. It's called When We Have Lost Enough. When we have lost enough, at the juncture of enough, loss becomes a river, a powerful undertow, a torrent sometimes, but a current on which we travel. Loss is a sentry, a watching, and always the motion of eyes, their cartoon arrows of glare, your brown iris, black pupil, seeing themselves in water, leaving themselves, vacant, vacated, those eyes in water, watching themselves pass. I have seen crocodiles in Africa floating like a ripple or wake, camouflaged except for the globe of watching, their eyes a bubble surfacing like drowned fears, a lurk, a stare, a stalk, a follow. I have seen snapping turtles, big as a baby's bathtub, barely submerged, barely visible, apparitions of silt swimming, their bulbous eyes ancient, patient as death. To that book-sharp gaze, the one we call colonial, we have lost enough. Cold, like an ox-eye warning of storm, always fixed on me, on you, we pursued, measured, appraised like a crumbling nation put up for quick sale, reduced. When we have lost enough, we lift our white school tired, lift loss like a sail. We have not drowned, not been swallowed by empire. We, steely, eyes forward, hoist our star-quilt sorrow, half-mast, and learn to sail. So I guess that is a poem of survivance. So now I'm really delighted to introduce the next reader. And Laura Tohi and I have known one another since the very first Returning the Gift Festival of Indigenous Writers in 1992, when we were both, let's say, 5 years old, just so you kind of get how old we are now. Okay, Laura Tohi is Dene. She's the current Navajo Nation Poet Laureate and an ASU Professor Emeriti. She is Sleepy Rock People Clan, born for the Bitterwater Clan. She has published 5 books, poetry, an anthology, oral history, and she's also written 2 librettos, Enemy Slayer, a Navajo Oratio, and In the Glittering World, these were performed in Phoenix and France. Her awards include the 2020 Academy of American Poetry Fellowship and the 2019 American Indian Festival of Writers Awards. Please welcome my friend, Laura Tohi.
Ahehe Kimberly, Yat Ehebina, She Laura Tohi and Ishgetsana Hapiling Nishle, Todajitni Bashishchin. Good morning, everyone. I'm Laura Tohi, and I am Sleepy Rock People Clan, born for the Bitterwater Clan people. Thank you for that beautiful introduction, Kim, and also for curating this, and to all the people who have organized this gathering of voices and poetry and stories. I want to start out first by reading a poem called My Body Holds Stones. I wrote this poem actually a few weeks before the bodies of these young Indigenous children were discovered in Canada near these boarding schools. I went to one of these schools when I was growing up. And so this is called My Body Holds Stones. My body holds stones of a tragic Indian warrior descending into sunset at trail's end, swallowed by 2 centuries. I'm still trying to unknot the silhouette. My body holds stones of Indian women surrounded by wolves, roaring at their feet, X's on their eyes, while sand gathers freely over their lost earring. Voices echo, I am my sister in a canyon while thunder sleeps. My body holds a stone monument to large smallpox blankets. Jagged winds wail the color yellow on the prairies that lay themselves down in the dying rays of the sun. A fat coyote ran across my path in winter. I looked for myself on both sides, counted myself among the surviving. My body holds stones too many to count. My body holds stones I cannot pass. And as Kim mentioned, a lot of Native poets, including myself, have this connection to land and place. I grew up on the Navajo Nation homeland, which lies within the states of Arizona, New Mexico, and a little bit into Utah. So a couple of these poems are from that manuscript or that book called Seye, Deep in the Rock. The first poem is called Denetka, and it means the people's homeland. Denet means the people, and that's our word for ourselves, how we name ourselves as Denet. Denetka, the silver breath of 1,000 horses, and it is only yours that I seek. I happily step over into existence, into our canyons, our rivers, our mountains, our valleys, sky beauty above and earth beauty below. Oh, how I've missed you, to think I was away for so long, and you were always there waiting on the red earth to hold yourself open and offer to carry my burden. Crossing. I've crossed over for love, for the language that is ours, for the grandmothers who know the wisdom of the earth, for the snow-covered winter night in the middle of our glittering homeland, for the horses that cover themselves beneath the downy snow, for the ragged ones who lost their way home and leave their sad trails on the weary sidewalks, for the 4 mountains that protect us, in whose laps we dream, for your bravery that shields us against monsters of the 21st century, for your stories that you reveal in the arms of night. May I be worthy. May I turn away from fear towards your lamp of love. I am unfurling this ribbon road that leads you to me. Then we read a couple of poems in the Navajo language, Denetka. It's about rain. Last night we had a really strong wind that blew across Phoenix, and then it also blew in the rain. This first one is called Female Rain, and the other one is called Male Rain. Female rain. Female rain dancing from the south, cloudy, cool, and gray, pregnant with rain child. At dawn, she gives birth to a gentle mist. Flowers bow with sustenance, luminescence all around. And this is the Navajo version of it. Nichtsa ba'ad, shada ahte go tahnal doko aljish, kos khazli, khonez kaze, nichtsa ba'ad betajol bejoltsa, aro nichtsa ba'ad biyaje petitna. Na nenil kako, nichtsa ba'ad biyaje khazli, chillat khahujon datwope alche raja. Aro nichikitnes dat lad. And this one is male rain. In the Navajo worldview, the world has a lot of dualities, and this is one of them about rain and how it can be male or female. We also have male and female stories, male and female mountains, and so forth. Male rain. He comes riding a dark horse, angry, malevolent, cold, bringing floods and heavy winds, warrior rain, having a 49 night, then rides away, leaving his enemy behind. Niltsa baka, niltsa baka. Ade slintal dilgilgo, ego, nahalengo. Bilchelt lodge. Khaj ko na yek ko tsede diskas go ahola. Toniol. Toyela doniol so ahola. Hashke nilsa baka nazba. E biga atha. Najnota ko yeska. Arosli belanal lodge. Anna ye. And this one is, I think I'm getting close to my time, but this is a poem called Japanese Garden. I'm concerned about, really care about what's happening not only to this planet, but to the inhabitants, like the animals who we consider our relatives, who are teachers to us. Human beings. And I was in Portland a couple of years ago, and I went to this exhibit at the Japanese Garden, and so I wrote this poem from that. Japanese Garden, after a stone and sand exhibit in Portland. A man is leading the animals. A man is leading the ones that float on water. A man is leading the winged ones. A man is leading the ones that swim. Maybe he's St. Francis, the long-robed man who calls the animals to him now. Maybe he's Noah, the one who gathered the animals and sailed away with them, they say. Who was there to witness their leaving, to sing a song for their journey? Where are they going? Their faces turn northward, taking their songs, taking their maps, taking their languages. Are they leaving with joy in their hearts, or is sadness eating at their star hearts? Excuse me. In the wake of their leaving, a small wind stirs the empty hands of the tree branches above us. What I will remember. Footsteps left like dinosaur tracks, pressed between Sky Woman and Mother Earth. When they leave, I will weep. I will weep. And I think I can just read this, the Navajo version of it. And I'm really honored to be here as part of the other languages that are being represented here from throughout Mother Earth. So this is called, it's the Navajo version of Japanese Garden. Japanese dak e yajade, Portland se dod ej, Danil I niki, Hastkin le na loshi yo ish, Hastkin le nda e ligi yo ish, Hastkin le nda taigi yo ish, Hastkin le nda alkongi yo ish. Saint Francis, that's it. Be e na shode. Hastkin di yenenille jinne. Kadats na loshi yoje. Noah that's it ate. Na loshi tsana el ya ayila. Do bil I el jinne. Ida Chesha binal. Chesha hakone din need. Chesha yahotral. Kad hagosha jetes ej. Dabani naho kosjiko dades I dabiin de. Kea be yagi deja. Bizarre deja. Bil da hojo dats. Do dats double hojo. Nad loshi is belat kateni yol yajibo atayila. Di benashita. Na ashon il bahe bezaze e bik eshchin. Yadel yel asado necheman hasa bitchage na naldo na halen. Na krigo. Descha. Descha. Thank you very much for inviting me to be part of this celebration of poetry.
Thank you, Laura. That was beautiful. I love the idea, of hearing it in both languages and how we get a sense then of poetry as music, right? Because it's the music of the language, which is also part of how we understand. It's not always the dictionary definition of words that get us there. So I really appreciate that. So now it's my really immense pleasure to introduce another of our wonderful Indigenous poets, Gordon Henry, who's actually a relative, some kind of relative of mine. We are both enrolled members of the White Earth Nation of Northwestern Minnesota. And Gordon has been the recipient of an American Book Award for his 1994 novel, The Light People, which at every chance I have, I bring into my classroom, and my students always love it. His poetry, fiction, and critical writing have been published extensively, both nationally and internationally. He has appeared in journals and anthologies, in translation in Spain, Italy, Greece, Hungary, and Germany. He is the current Audrey and John C. Leslie Endowed Chair of American Indian and Indigenous Literature at Michigan State University. And I also know that he has a new book coming out this year called Spirit Matters. Please welcome the amazing Gordon Henry.
Chimigwech Kim Chimigwech Iwaguga Mijiang Ugijigad. Chimigwech Iwaguga Mijiang Iji Bimadijang Minogijabal God Kakina. I thank you all for your work here, and want to thank Neil and Marcus and Kim for putting this event together. And I just wanted to also say that I'm honored to read with these wonderful poets. Your words are inspiring, and I'll take some of these words back with me as I'm traveling and teaching my students in the classroom. I just opened up with a brief introduction on Anishinaabe. I'm not a native speaker. The language was lost through our family some years ago. Both my grandmothers went to boarding school My father joined the military and ended up not speaking the language after he left the reservation. I'm going to read from my first collection. It's of poetry. It's kind of a collection of poetry. It's also sort of a mixed genre, semi-autobiographical in some parts. This poem that I'm going to read has been anthologized in various places. It seems to move as it wishes through different texts and so forth. When names escaped us. The boy painted himself white and ran into the darkness. We let the words, "He may be dead," bury him, bury him. We took his clothes to the rummage sale in the basement of the mission. We put his photographs and drawings in a bird cage and covered it with a star quilt. For 4 nights, voices carried clear to the river. After winter, so many storms moved in. Strangers came among us. They danced, they shoveled in the shadows of trees. Then somehow we all felt all of us were of this one boy. This next poem is in the book Kim mentioned, as in fact the rest of it I'm going to read here. All right, the book is, as Kim said, titled Spirit Matters, White Clay, Red Exits, Distant Others. And the white clay refers to our homeland, the White Earth Reservation, which white clay has been translated to White Earth. And the red exits has to do with our red relatives sort of exiting from this earthly plane, maybe perhaps traveling to the Star Road. I try to thematize this around references to river today. This poem is titled The River Tells, Sings to Us Sleeping. Fox on the right bank before willow, low-flying crow across the ever-flowing glisten of our many faces, leaping autumn spawn, the language of strangers upstream, something about a moon-cast echo of a singer on a bridge, a canto of blown smoke, with a syntax of floating bodies and undisclosed submersible consonants. This is where you may swim, this is where you must not. A silent swirl here, a man and a woman on a red blanket embankment together, a woman looking into stiller water for a past among floating leaves. I have taken children, I have delivered relatives, downstream from portages and dams, a mother with an offering to always. Deer Lick, sunrise. We have accepted another small craft, washed out bear tracks with the wake of a white canoe, early moon at the bow, late sun stern, tales of missing bodies and boats turned over, log rolling narratives, ice jam explosions, torches and spears, the lunge of brown fish, their sunstream variant color, the pull of line, a stone throw splash, underwater gleam of small change, the entry of face wash hands, a skimmer's touch beneath a dragonfly circle, the sand lens of a cannon caressed by fingers of weed, the hardness of protruding rock at heart-stopping rapids, a tuber's beer can flying toward the 2 blue heron priested shore, a hand on a lantern drawing nearer to this voice, a child looking to cross an archipelago of stones, a wine-soaked teenage poet from the left bank cursing loneliness, leather notebook turning over in cedar leaf rapids, words illegible, a few unbound pages separating, a zodiac picture pouring star-tailed myths into all we witness in slow, continuous passing. Untitled, this poem is, I suppose I could have used the first line to title it, but chose not to. The story you wanted to write is on fire. Paper lathered with bear grease floating down a river. Your aunt on the other side of the river, a phone to her ear, chewing gum, howling obscenities into a mouthpiece under thunderheads emerging in shapes that will inspire names of children, yet to no language. The other end earpiece, your grandfather, underground in the funereal shadow box, surrounded by liquor glass, a few jagged bottle bottoms, throats broken from empties, the rest crushed stars of ice, brown grain belt toenails, curved claws of windshield glass blown open from some long night of lost impact, an abused blue Buick carrying a body headed for the Star Road afterlife, the container and uncontained, reshaped like memory itself, pieced chaotically in chips and mounds of images, too treacherous to touch, too sharp to hold, too broken to make out the scene, their shining less so, if they even show anything but how the moon or sun still move across the time-wrought surfaces we are and have been, on the way to submergence, a deeper drawing down of face into glass, glass and eyes lost in fixed gaze of some turned over interior, seeing may never come back from. The next collection I'm working on is actually held together by what I call relatives and relative exes. That began way back when I wrote my novel, that I put these patterns or tracks of X's throughout each story that I wrote. And so I continue to put that pattern of X's in my poetry. And the X sort of signifies the sort of chiasmus and also the way that some of our relatives signed an X on treaty documents. This is relative X, a white clay tabernacle of grief, of longing, unwrapped parcels of lost joy, survival school books, margins with poorly drawn broken hearts, empty mirrors, wash basin in rear view, useless timepieces worn down to a last hour, an interval less than a stop second, tobacco ties, bowls of beads for unmade giveaway Thunderbirds, BIA check stubs, a glass ashtray your mother threw at some deer hunter shadow of betrayal in the doorway, a hissing cassette recording of Ring of Fire, sung by the Army vet face on the drunk punch wall, who waved the gun at us last Christmas, then set fire to his own childhood regalia. There's an unblessed host in there too. A book of matches from some white bar in Walker, Park Rapids or Wadena. A poorly developed photograph from a blonde from Anoka. A page lifted from The Invisible Musician. A baseball cup. A Kennedy $50 from a confirmation sponsor. An illegible prescription for persistent pain. The dried white chrysanthemum wedding flower. A bullet from the pistol your aunt threw into the White Clay River after your grandfather died. A singer's drumstick from the Red Branch drum, the drum with only one singer left. I'm just going to read one more poem. Not sure how much time I have left, but these are all sort of thematically, I guess you could say darker in some way. My aunt passed on in 2016. It was one of those contentious kind of family funerals that there was a lot of infighting there, and some things that we still have yet to resolve as a family. But I thought of her name on her headstone was Denetka, which means crow woman. And so I wrote this poem. I'm thinking of her, but it's not exactly, of course, about her. Dear crow woman, you could have told me how I was near dead. Horses, sun-beaten earth shadows on the horizon. You could have said I looked different without sun in a room where we hung our heads. You could have told me I could not return to once again the never told beginning of how we speak when even we aren't listening. You could have reminded me of the ghost-lit bodies inhabiting my sleepwalker passing, from bed to fixtures, murmuring in walls behind crooked mirrors. The last wall marked by stain, running into window, deep into some August hour, so late the gap unto my next awakening closes, as if there were never eyes for seeing above the branched blow of arms of barren hardwood over the road. What lies beyond starlight spaces of night so long as this, you could have told me. Again, I appreciate all your work, and it's an honor to be part of the Poets Republic and this reading. And I wish you all the best, and just keep writing this beautiful work that you're doing. Miigwech.
Many thanks for your sets there, Gordon and Laura, and to Kimberly for introducing them so beautifully. It's our pleasure to have you with us, and really we are honoured to have the opportunity to hear your work. Definitely Zoom has facilitated a lot more ability to share and to connect between communities, and so that's the name of the game today, and we're absolutely thrilled to have you with us. The tradition really is that I'm the interval entertainment, so I won't break with it. Usually I am a poet, I'm also a singer as well as an editor, so I usually do give you a song. This is a new one that features in my forthcoming collection. It was inspired by a letter that I found in Ambala, which is the online archive of Highland history, which is free to access for anybody. And it reads, it was written in 1782, written on dated the 16th of March of that year. It says, the bearer, Lieutenant Solly MacDonald of the British Legion, has permission to take with him a black woman named Doll, being the property of his daughter Mary, and brought from North Carolina with his family. It says here the letter was countersigned on the 26th of April 1783 by the Commandant's office, effectively meaning that a Gaelic speaker from the Isle of Skye was granted permission to take his a slave with him back to the Isle of Skye. And I chose to write it mainly because situation of the Gaels is quite often presented as being quite a black and white thing, and we need to discuss the idea of perhaps sometimes the colonized being the colonizer, to be a bit more realistic about the situation. I won't speak further on the subject because being English born, I don't really feel qualified to, but I'll let you make up your own minds based on the source. And so this is the song. I set it to a tune which is most commonly sung to Dwy'ch Fichgwy or Mavalochig na Cyrdig Fawr, which is an important song talking about the Scottish clearances, the replacement of Gaelic-speaking communities in Sutherland with sheep, and a strong indictment of the Earl and Countess of Sutherland and Patrick Seller. So here it is, it's called Dolach. Chaburin cabi biogani, Dolach oran corein, and the humil cote van hognin, skenniegi alenje. Lelietje skriftje genaad jaun, stlestrenes ne hinje reis, en roe fin und reinje oel, skentane gi jove. She ever kette horst haar hoin, Freddy en Gengiles clown, and the hoi voten en le lief, skem feike ge agnushant. Ach, hoe de frekker skrivet life, Leshin hooked all hak vekadan, Guelenski en och nambjaun, le meister. Chabuning havi biogani, Dolach chore korein, and the chumed luse venayi is kore skjold geniste, Mavalach gekne kirig voort, Catch the clown and then ye code, Yalichrum duevamiok, Masra dwi hi na faso. Hey, Nakaba, bit of an exclusive there. So to introduce the Gaelic pages, which I think can this issue once again be better described as the Celtic language pages. Firstly, we're thrilled to have reached issue 10, and this is indeed the 9th issue, which has provided designated pagination for Gaelic poetry, as well as welcoming in poetry in the other Celtic languages of these islands. We are the only magazine in Scotland to designate 6 pages minimum to this kind of poetry, which says a lot really for the publishing sector in this country. This time we've been celebrating connections between peoples, and that's mainly been through translation. So we have a number of poems, one that's been self-translated by Ewan Stewart from the Scottish Gaelic to the Irish. I've translated a couple from Cornish via English into Gaelic and from English into Gaelic. And we've also got another poem that's been translated from English into Irish, as well as some poems, just originals in Scottish Gaelic as well, which is fantastic. And it's great to see the health of these languages in their poetry, as well as some younger voices. So let's chat from me. Tomwyd's honor has fought chud is Diarmid Lenihan as Conte Curie in Éireann. We're really pleased to welcome Diarmid Lenihan from County Kerry. So let me fiddle with the button. Where's it gone? Here it is. Here we are. Hi, Diarmid. Constatato.
Gurmil Mahgad of Arcus. Diaghiv is Misha Diarmid Lenihan. I'm Diarmid Lenihan. I thank you so much for inviting me to speak here today. It's an honor to share the space with so many wonderful talents, wonderful talented artists. I have some poems today, both in Irish and English. So I'm just going to jump into that. This is a poem in Irish called Trá na Fianna. Le chéile ar deire, rhainmid an intin céine, an bélas na lába céine. Is ólamid ón mugga céine, san áta na bhulamar le chéile, na blian tóhen, hús an seár alta Trá na Fianna. Tá ar gasa taobh le taobh, tá de láb das am láb clé. Ní aighan sé dúrcha, fanan na héan an seo go dtí lár na hithe. Tá sé ceart go leor stór ó gram a chrí, ní féidir le bheith feargach leat. Blianta ó hin nu an é, denim derúd caitheann na bhulamar, riamh tús ma héal féidir. Teachtareacht rún de bitse, I múig mé inis, ach tuc mé ar ais cúd lá éigean. This is a piece I wrote a very long time ago in English. It's called Past Lives. Somewhere out there, it's the afternoon, curtain darkness smothering where we lie. I'm burning up a 4-hour fever, skin scrapes flesh through flannel. October has been sleepless for me. I have spent lifetimes in your bed, built my kingdoms inside my head. You've slept dreamless below me. This is not a love poem, it is a question you will never answer. I have asked it for millennia. I used to know you back when we wore sackcloth and worked our hands till they broke. I knew you when people like us had our tongues cut and our eyes plucked from their sockets. I knew you before we were here, when sea-covered land and myths were yet to be told. I knew you when we were kids. I have seen your face before in the waves of Cuminol. But we met when you were 20 and I was a city refugee. I didn't look back as I left. And when I looked straight ahead, I saw you. But it took you time to see me too, returning to you from a past life where you knew me. And you looked at me so sad, touched my hair and said my name. You did not love me then, and I will seek you out years from now, and you will know me then. When you slept beside me first on the living room floor, I knew. It all appeared before me at once, that I will always know you. When the earth burns and the seas boil, I will come back to you, and you will sleep for hours on a dark October afternoon, and when you wake, I will be there. So this is the piece that is in this issue of Poets Republic, and it is a piece by Jessamine O'Connor that I had the honour of translating into Irish. It is called Fáilte. Lauren and Tillon leis na tefig. Os cliam na géig a cragach málta, an mugad seo dúileán ag casa, ma chráig go chéine go leathan, ma lábha sínta amach as choréil clachas ganamh. Ileán scape ar nos rosanna, na grafróga chun taspáintit cá cheartta tachta dír. Agus nuair atá congrach gohan, or dóigh mé an éadach garbh de mo chlí gurtas lechna, clúdóigh mé hu in san clóca pastí. Balóigh mé na ila glasa, smélóga seachan gurama, chun cocoon talamh a dhéanamh deit chun fásan. Mar nuair atá de thos tóca agat, nuair atá tú an andúiseacht, beidh mé sanna tú a eiscint de scíhan ag oscailt amach am grúig scanal, de fréamhacha nua codáin am scabóga agus tú ag tuairt dom déir or. Yeah, so I was delighted to be able to translate that. And you'll be hearing some of Jessamyn's stuff later, which I'm really looking forward to. This is a piece I wrote called Snow from Above. Is anyone listening? The time now is 2 minutes to midnight, and oh, I did not expect the snow, passengers. Do you see it, or is that only me? Have you dreamed as I have dreamed, of reaching destinations unchanged, of bickering amongst yourselves but shutting your mouth to gnaw at touchdown? How inconsequential our lives are upon seeing the snow, somehow now the biggest impact I've ever felt upon my psyche as we slowly drop. You're not answering, are you there? Please, passengers, do you see the snow as we hover above fields and descend into the city of marvelous lights? I rise as if pulled by thick silk cords, open the shuttered door and peer out, and the rows are empty and deathly. You disappear into the landscape. This is another Irish piece, and it's called Untitled. Siam sa circle solas urlor ma hiomar cuddleta scorium na queenla. Cugaca har timplerm, lasamid galer anish ta gasort solas. Lasan tu an lampa sa chuana ermayask, anish tris hort solas. Imrian tuer de gahan, den tu glech, kero hort solas. Is lasan de cricken an shomer lesh, is tusan dargalach. This is a piece from my portfolio from when I was in a writing course in college, and it is called And This Is My All, I Am Giving You My All. All that I have collected standing out back as the sun rises and the mist burns, it slips through my fingers and I crawl backwards into bed and sleep with your ghost. Soot mixes with the rain and settles on my eyelids, and I send an incomprehensible message out into the morning. You receive it by midday. Second person, this is an endless conversation. I really can't see how to disconnect. Curl the telephone wires around my fingers. Pry the rings from my hands, but you can still see the marks they leave. Second person. I am garbled and breathless by mid-year, sweating into the sand and cloyed by midsummer humidity that settles in my window, scratches its way in. I'm not ready to leave again. This is just a small kind of silly piece that I wrote for a poetry class. Upon being asked to write a villanelle, I immediately thought of you, how all my poems have rebelled in you, the hitching thrill, saltwater passing through, my thoughts scattering pell-mell, how I can shape this villanelle to be especially for you, after I've written of yourselves, and how your voice rings like a bell, splits my ribs the whole way through, I feel my lungs begin to swell. Should I hide or should I tell, all that's on my mind is you, thoughts I cannot quench nor quell nor quash through villanelle. This is my last Irish piece that I'm going to read, and it is called Bàrd ceann suas. Bàrd ceann suas, níl am stoppa faoi ó seacht na madan fiara, I crimmalí chun dúiseacht, I cluisiant im intin fós. Bàrd ceann suas, denig mé agus cad a turlógan sin. Amach a lór lisbol, s mé sit cloch, norach, gorach, láh a gramathe lena chéile, Craig an stad fós agus tusa có séh nos nó hála rudder be doing. Ach tas agat, Bàrd ceann suas, cá tá dénta inis, cá tá tasnathe ag de lábha is de cheann, de intin is de bhéal, go háirithe de bhéal, nuair bhachas me cheann suas, is líon me cricin, is bris me canábha is dócha, is den pe rud ba bhíon leat, is bogach mé me cheann suas dit nuair cluise mé, Stúch seoibh mé madan fiara, seachtar madan, is mé fósa cré. This is a piece called Missed Connections. Missed Connections. I have hummed soft and yellow in the dark, wrapped in a dog hair duvet at 3 a.m. in your living room. And when I think of you embracing me, the time that has passed since opens up below me and stretches for miles. I am a half-frozen gull flying across the Irish Sea to you, but getting lost in the mist. And it has been 3 weeks since anyone last hugged me. I forgot that we are allowed to touch other humans. Missed connections. I forgot until you did it, like it was expected and natural, and like you can just touch arms and chests and backs, just like that. I have glowed so dim and butter yellow in your living room, listening to voices in the kitchen, feeling the light shaft softly across through, and how the shadow fell over my face. I told you I dropped off as soon as my head hit the pillow, but I lied. I stayed awake listening to you talk and thinking about your teeth and the bones in your face and the glitter on your cheeks. Missed connections. 8 a.m. I sidestepped the stickiness on the floor as I left, stared at myself pre-anything in the mirror in the bathroom under the stairs, walked to catch the bus in the morning light, thinking of you, still sleeping. Missed connections. If I were to start life over again with all the knowledge I know now, all I know is I was used to find you sooner. And this is the last piece I'm going to read. It is called Naked. Rain barrel taste in the hedgerows. January feels autumnal. All of a sudden, rose bushes imagined on the highway of our country roads. I knew you years ago, but only met you now. It's a mile walk to the village. I'm thinking of you here and now. Melancholy lives in the gorse. I patch myself into the bushes, hide as the cars go by, sleep under the grey sky for the whole afternoon. Naked if I want to, connected through the sun, though she hides right now. I await dry mouth feeling and headaches in the morning. That's me done. Thank you so much.
Mila Mahagat Yermid. Many thanks, Dermot, for sharing your work with us, and it's great to welcome you into the Poets Republic family. And thanks to Jess for helping us to make that connection. Our next reader is, I'm just going to spotlight him there, is Taran Spalding Jenkin, an exponent of the Cornish language, which is the has got the smallest speaking population of all the Celtic languages, but Taran keeps it mighty. Fatlagen is Taran.
Delora, yeah, Fatlagen Chwiol, Taranov. How are you all? I'm Taran. Miraz Braz, Rag Ol, and Brodoniath Ma, thank you so much for all this poetry. It's been absolutely beautiful. It's been a privilege to listen to. I've got a couple of poems for you in Cornish. I will give you a little bit of translation too. And we'll start with one I wrote a little while ago. I think it was published in issue 8, I want to say, of Poets Republic. It's called An Luith Agausis, which means the president spoke. And that might give you a clue about who it's about. It goes like this. Ev du lagus o gwirth. Ninzo glas in morio reina. Ninzo bunans o nervia in angologi tewetho. Mes. Mi aweles morfleth enna. Mar quellen morfleth a mi o nervia. Mia asa andor festin scav. Mes den mar cri morvleth lias queth. Wortiweth ni worthip tis thotho. An luith a sevis hagagausis. Odra hevians paleno the worth gerio. Ev costena antirs cusk. O leski liverio de ev dans. Gord hel bana heb go polu marnas dello. Imelinen mon intra luith haluyas. Hamartesan in umoi the les. It's in English. It's the president spoke. His eyes were inorganic green. There was no blue in those seas. There was no life swimming in the stormy lighthouses. But I see a shark there. If I were to see a shark while I was swimming, I would leave the water pretty quick. But if a person cries shark too many times, eventually people stop replying. The president stood and spoke, building bullets out of words. He targeted the sleeping people, burning books through his teeth, a flagship without sail or rudder, only a figurehead. There is a fine line between a president and a chauffeur, and perhaps one has more use. So that last line is a play on the Cornish. Luith is president and Luyas is a driver or a chauffeur. It comes from the verb lu, to drive. So literally a fine line, but also, you know, kind of thematically, I think, relevant too. The next one I'd like to read is a newer one, kind of thinking about the language and how it fits into a modern life and the legacy of its loss as a community language in Cornwall. It's called In the Name of Strangers, a Bàrd Estrenyon. Ni glua fi o lev, mi a wel o hano warn recno ribendaris, cepar del didinach. Mi a drelia the gunis, das dui o his lev, litharenek o leski cepar ha glasneth. I do not hear my voice. I see my name on the bills by the door just as unwelcome. I translate into firewood, rekindle my voice box, alphabets burning like Glasny. Mia gov has skull, enna, o gano nins o coeth, arwascus in I glap min huartho gans an son a garno wan forthu, o taseni in o clopen, ni alavi prederi in o luyo, Ruth ha gwyn heb ken. I remember school. There my mouth was no friend, oppressive in its chatter, smiles with the sound of hooves on the black road resounding in my skull. I cannot think in my own colours, only red and white. Mea geli dens del tavis knoweth, Herthia in mers obriansen, Mea give and dens ma cascaris in pon wath. Ev am compel the henwell o mamwin, henwin and corth, grandma, granny, nan, gerio leveris g bejeth nevra, mesabartha strenyon in delore bow. I lose teeth as a new tongue pushes out from my throat. I find those teeth still scattered amongst the dust. It compels me to call my mamwin strange names, grandma, granny, nan, words never spoken to her face, but in the name of strangers, amen. Hedw, in Cerno, ni gluavi an yeth, mes mia il regia an awarthio, han chio o thelu, han hwethlo an tir maitre hevsons, enna ni avrath an dor, orthi verkia gans agendens, ragnevra vinitha. Today in Cornwall, I do not hear the language, but I can read the signs and my family's houses and the legends of the land which they built. There we bite the earth, marking it with our teeth forevermore. In the spit then roll and re varo, scrifis in dadon, mea glua vi o lev, pan mea gaus. Despite the obituary written in your hand, I hear my voice when I speak. Miraz, thank you.
Miraz, Taran, fantastic to have you with us.
I could do one more if I've got
Oh,
time.
go for it. Go for it.
Yeah.
Sorry, I thought that was your turn as it was the end. Fire on.
I'll do one more. This one was written for the G7, actually. The G7 was held in Cornwall last year in Carbis Bay near St Ives. And before it started, the hotel it was hosted at decided to destroy a bunch of very important natural land and habitat nearby to build some meeting sheds that weren't even needed. But I was commissioned to write a poem to go along with some other work that was being made to send to the leaders as a kind of behind the postcard of Cornwall, behind the sun and the sea and the pasties that everyone knows about Cornwall, to the real Cornwall. And I worked with I worked with a LGBT group to come up with this. So it's a mixture of kind of Cornish language and identity, along with LGBT identity, and also the land and destruction of the land. It's called Ninsa's Guth in Kesteven. There's no pride in concrete. Mar ni ilachui cara densis, fatal ilachui cara and bees. If you can't love humanity, how can you love their world? Ninzu an gweres an grond a honi ethol, mes lei heb gweres u lei heb savla. The soil is not the basis of all identity, but a place without soil is a place without somewhere to stand. Kepar hageneth ima edom dagen beers of ors linyel, rag kavos agen honon Australia. Like gender, our world must be fluid in order to represent our changing selves. Ninzu parda and kersam gudieno, ogio groanen crethek. Equality is not identical seams of pebble-dash houses. Po pen gwedd trechis compes gans chino palas o herthia and more splan, or tree stumps cut even with diggers pushing into the shining sea. Marzu and gerio ma distir. Ithu drefen ag a dastuena dha rianzo, imonzi o concha dres ag an tavozo hani o causal. If these words are meaningless, it is because they reflect your deeds. They are concreting over our tongues as we speak. Agan hensio hanio curthes, agan gwyth hanio and othanella, our ways as we walk, our trees as we breathe. Hagan kamenetho hanio thasaya, guntel gans goth, govenek hakarenza, and our communities as we try to gather with pride, hope, love. Bispan vo ol gesis and gam neves banalos onija the hanta gwern, until all that is left of the rainbow is a grey flag flying at half-mast. Marnigan gorthu lemon, hui avith orth agan galari diwetha. If you don't respect us now, you will mourn us later. Miraz Braz, thank you so much.
Fantastic stuff, Miraz, Taran, Morantang. Yeah, I think considering the two sections of the magazine that we've just had excerpts from, you know, a lot of shared themes and concerns. And so I hope that we've given our audience a rich experience. I'm absolutely sure of it. I'll hand over to our Scots-speaking editor, Hugh McMillan. Here he is, down in Pinpont, Galloway.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Well, you heard Leslie Benji at the start, a great example of a poet writing in Scots and English, and a great example of the quality of writer that we have in the issue of Poets Republic that's coming out. And we're going to hear Marie-Therese Taylor after I've blethered for a wee while as well. As Neil said, the Poets Republic was founded as a kind of antidote to the elitist and staid Scottish poetry scene. But I have to tell you that I discovered yesterday there are no less than 6 poems from the Poets Republic have made it onto the best Scottish poems shortlist. I don't know what to say about this, whether that's a thing to celebrate or not, given our subversive tendencies. Perhaps we should dedicate the next issue of Poets Republic to slagging ourselves off, to ranting and railing against ourselves. But I think it's a sign that Poets Republic is getting more noticed, not just for the quality of the writing that's in it, but for initiatives, but for the depth of our Gaelic coverage and Cornish, and because of initiatives like we've got today with Kimberly and Gordon and Laura, an amazing sort of thing. And what a moving experience it has been, really. I know it's only January, but I'm willing to bet there won't be another poetry reading this year which has Navajo, Cornish and Irish and Scottish Gaelic readers as well as English ones. Anyway, as is tradition, I'm going to read a wee poem of my own and then hand over to Marie-Therese Taylor. Kimberly was talking about how much perhaps her peoples would have in common with the Scots to a certain extent because of their commitment to the land, to the ideas of belonging, feelings of place and belonging. And I live at the edge of a glen called the Scar Glen. which winds for miles just down to our door here. And we walk, and during lockdown and so on, we walked all the time in these sort of places, as people have done for centuries before us. And so I wrote this called Ghosts of the Scar. It's 3 sections, but it's a titchy wee poem, don't worry. Each day I try to walk a path that isn't shown, but is underfoot, delicate as a vein below the skin of soil and mold. These paths lead to fords and crossings, stiles, stones slung haphazardly across glassy streams. Sometimes there are bridges and no rivers, as if the land has slipped like a rug beneath our shoes, and rivers somehow became burns, and burns somehow became scars in the earth. There are no maps, but in the mind at the crossing point of day and night, it is easy to see my brothers and sisters, the traders, the soldiers, the travellers, the drovers, the pilgrims, the poets, shouldering their packs, walking forever in the woods. Across the night, horned by cold, one owl, then another in eerie harmony. We flit from one topic to the next, love and hate, talk money, plot in alleyways, fall apart and die. And during all that, owls phrase songs with such precision that the stars turn out to light the hapless world. I walked along rutted tractor footprints and puddles hard as pearl to a loch on top of the world, a silver scar in a basin of felled pine, a single teardrop, an eye open to heaven below a ball of cloud. I asked what there is to say now the world is done. A heron spoke, or the wind through gaps in dikes. Keep asking, it said, always ask. Not a word is wasted. Thank you very much. Do I introduce Marie-Therese, Marcus, or do you? Marcus has disappeared. Right. Can I introduce Marie-Therese then?
Go for it, Hugh.
Are you with us? Right, Marie-Therese. Oh, he's back. Okay.
Right. Okay, Hugh. Thanks so much. I enjoyed that. I like the idea of all these ghosts of the past walking along the path and talking to the herons in the wind. Thank you. This is a poem I'm going to start with. It's really about language in the sense of how, as dementia sets into some people, language gets lost or corrupted, and how through these stages, the worst bit is when you can still grasp a little bit of the former clarity, and actually when you go completely over the hill, how much better things can be. But here we go. Aberdeen is a trick of the light. When the sun breaks through, the city shivers. A speck of feldspar, a glint of mica in the old man's eye. It's visiting time. He may remember the last time we spoke. He whispered, "Granite is ignominious," and corrected himself. Igneous, an eruption from the underworld. Beneath comforting clouds, he has domesticated himself. But intrusive clear spells hit hard when he sees that this is not his home, the unfamiliarity of this garden with no elder. Looking up, he reminds me that the light left the sun 8 minutes and 20 seconds ago. And looking down, he says, "My legs are bells. They sound all wrong, and these are not my clothes. I hate blue, and they smell of fish." I have an ignominious thought. I wish him winter. I wish him for ice, for frozen breath. And then this one, I'll continue on a winter idea. This is when 2 of my children kind of lost an aspect of their innocence. We used to go walking beside a pond every day because we had dogs and things like that. And one day the ice had frozen over and there was a dead cat under the ice. And too late, kids saw it. Cat. One winter, beneath the ice, the pond secured the cat. Face up, his legs splayed to 4 compass points, his back arched around the earth, behind parted teeth, his astonished howl silenced by the freeze. When the thaw came, there were only clumps of cat slapping the face of the water, while in the centre of the pond, the little tethered boats rocked like empty cradles. And this one, I don't know if you remember when there was talk of citizenship tests for people hoping to settle here. I found the idea outrageous and rather silly, because the people who were coming here, as in terms of the world, seemed to be the best citizens we ever had. So, citizenship test. A letter to accompany an application for asylum from the head of the family with whom the applicant is staying. Sir, I know this boy. He fled when they burned his home in the mountains southeast of Turkey. He still walks the ridge where guards made their mark on his 12-year-old thigh. He stopped his ears as the soldiers entered his 9-year-old sister. This boy has watched the sunset on pity, and there is no beauty. What is it, you ask, that language he speaks? Your question is heavy. How many can he? Only the one. Only the zone learned from his mother and the songs of strangers round half-mended walls of unwelcome tents as he crossed unmarked borders of indifferent states. You say he must learn ours if he wants to stay here, yet he already has 30 or more names for the wind, and he never translates. When you talk of his flight, please think about birds, their costly migration, the strength of their hope, the weight of their wings, and the sigh of their landing. And I'm just going to finish up with, I'm going to finish up with the one that is appearing in this issue of Poets Republic. Thank you so much. I've so enjoyed this afternoon and hearing the sounds, the musicality of different languages, even when I don't follow the word for word thing. And I love the idea of rain having a gender and looking at it different ways. Here's the one from Poets Republic. It's concerned with do you remember the time there was a little boy that was washed up on the shores of Turkey, a little 4-year-old found dead, face down, life jacket on, and everybody was appalled and cried for days and was outraged and all the rest of it. But what do you do with that information that you can't unknow? Debris. Being busy in the kitchen making the tea, it's some time before I notice the boy washed up on the living room floor, his grey lifelessness seeping into the carpet. Still wearing his incompetent life jacket, I knew he was the one from the boats afloat on the TV screen, their cargo discharging itself into our inhospitable waters. A woman faces the camera. Her words are drowned in the sound of panic. She points to photographs of my children on the shelves behind me. Her meaning is clear. I answer her question, tell her that what she fears has happened. She is pressed into the arms of a sister. I hold her boy across my lap, but I cannot turn his face to show her. I carry him to the airing cupboard and nest him in towels beside things to be dried, ironed, and tucked away in drawers. I'll have to clear this up before my boys come home. Salt water will leave a mark. For now, I switch off and move the rug to cover the reproach, and I'm too tired for questions. Thank you. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Marie-Therese. Fantastic to have you with us. I think this is your first
That's
Poetry
right.
Public reading, and we'll be glad to have you back. Hopefully when we can be together in the flesh. We do normally have our launches either in Stonehaven, where Neil's based, or in Edinburgh, where I'm based. And yes, hopefully with the lessening of restrictions, we'll be able to get out there in person as we were for the wee gathering in Stonehaven this summer and meet you. But for the time being, it's been fantastic to be able to connect communities across the water all together for one afternoon of poetry. I am going to read Marie-Therese's poem in Gaelic, which is from my forthcoming collection of translations that will be published by Drunk Muse Press. And this is the first time I've done it. I think it's the first time that Marie-Therese has heard it. So here goes nothing. Ha upperein nach les miaul holish, na de vrishes en solis tre, biachach griesach, krimak veldsper, lanje krikja lachig, an a soul bottig. Han taumas an keli, is dalchig an klingje en oert me jere gevrinsing, hakere, ha klach rein igna nimias, Kjarstike hein, igneus, moimet cheese na nog. Verhorst en skohen, hij kallohig, ac spoorach kruai wil turi. Nu de hier njach lesen rache, genialis de garig sha geniarne, ac het sues kurien am chinje gan drage solis agrien, ac een och minigen is vichit dicht. Ac het sies kanje is klokken machassen, it's kiar en fuim. It's halumsa and turdach shaw, as lugarum, godum, agus falig an ish gaska, asta. This mathloch mas moin, mo vien ga and gaurig, me and J, anno raja. There we go. All right, so to close the I was going to say evening, I think it's still afternoon. We're going to welcome Jasmine O'Connor, who's been helping us out with this issue as well, representing our Irish contingent, and she's going to tell us a little bit more about Drunk Muse Press, which is our kind of sister initiative, publishing initiative. Here's Jasmine.
Hello. Well, I'm still choked up after Marie-Therese. That was just really amazing. And yeah, and this whole afternoon, I feel so honored to have been part of it. I don't think I've ever been to a poetry session like this. And even to hear languages I've never even heard before, including Cornish, even though it's only across the water. So I suppose I'm only going to read one poem, but I'd like to first of all thank everybody and remind any watchers or listeners on the YouTube that, of course, this is a magazine launch, like a pre-launch for the magazine, but you can buy the magazine now from poetsrepublic.online, and also that we have our other kind of affiliated press called Drunk Muse Press, and we have Neil particularly and Hugh have been doing great work on bringing out poetry collections and also the prison memoirs of Doreen Tatour, and we have books by Josie Neal, Harry Smart, George Gunn, and soon we'll have an Irish collection from Helen Graham and more in the pipeline, and to check them out. So it's Drunk Muse Press and Poets Republic online. Yeah, so thanks to everybody who was reading, the featured readers like Leslie Benzie, Laura Tohey, Gordon Henry, all from the America, and that was just stunning. And Diarmuid Lenihan, who it was great to see again. We were classmates not long ago. Taryn Spalding Jenkin and Marie-Therese Taylor, and as well as, of course, the editors, Hugh, Neil, and Marcus, and the guest editor from America, Kimberly Blaser. And it was just wonderful. I feel I just don't know what to say. I'm just gonna finish with one fairly short poem, which is because one of Diarmuid's Irish language poems called Fáilte was a translation of one of my English language poems, because my Irish is terrible, but I'll read my English version to finish up, and thank everybody. It's written in the voice of the island of Ireland, which is the west coast of Europe. Welcome. I open up my craggy arms, my cliffs, this shift of whirling gulls, stretch my beaches wide, reach out my hands made of coral, stone, and sand, scatter islands like roses or breadcrumbs to show you where to land. And when you're close enough, I'll lift up the rough cloth of my hedges, fields, and locks, wrap its patchwork cloak around you, gather the lush green folds and rolls of sequin blues to make an earth cocoon for you to grow in. Because when you're rested and ready to stir, it will be my pleasure to watch your wings unfold, unfurl in my cloud-thick hair, sprout your new roots, feet deep, into my lungs and feed me your fresh air. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks so much, Jess. I just think the perfect message to end this afternoon session on, and thanks to everybody that's tuned in on YouTube. I'll stop